One of the other mediums I've worked with is charcoal. You'll see this in the video as well. It is still in the tray because it is very messy, so if I pick it up, it's going to go all over my fingers, which I don't quite want at the moment. But using charcoal was very interesting and very different to using the paint. Much like paint, charcoal is very messy. However, it's messy in a different way. It's a little bit harder to get off. Charcoal is something that I've experienced in previous art classes that I've had both in high school and university. So I'm familiar with working with charcoal as well. It's not my favorite medium to work with just because it is messy, and the minute you stick your hand over something, it just smudges all over the place. It gets all over the side of your hand. I know paint can do that too, but it's a little bit different. With charcoal, it's almost like a pastel where it glides really smoothly, which is nice. And what I do like about charcoal is I feel like you do have a little bit more control than you do with paint. So with the charcoal, you can really go in, you can use either a little blending stick or your fingers, and you can really go in and just kind of smudge and make different depths and dimensions as you kind of go along. Whereas with paint, because it dries, you're a little bit limited. It is a little bit thicker of a material too, so it's a little bit harder to do. Sometimes you do have to wait for it to dry if you're working with acrylics and you want to wait for it to dry so that you can create that depth in those shades. So that's what charcoal is nice for. The texture is a little bit more solid, of course, because you're working with a stick rather than a liquid. So you have something to physically hold on to as well. So I find with this, you do need to have a little bit more of a steady hand and a little bit more control. Obviously, art is very subjective. So not saying it has to be perfect for it to be artwork, but I could see where this might be a little bit more difficult for children because you do, I guess I will pick it up. We'll pick it up to show. You do have to hold it almost like a pencil. So this is a very refined motor skill, and this can be difficult for some kids. Now, of course, you can also hold it like this, and you can use the graphite stick, the charcoal, to just kind of smudge it this way. That might be a little bit easier for kids, but typically this way is probably the way that they're going to go and try to grab it like a pencil, or if they were to draw with a crayon or that sort of thing. Now, because you do have a little bit more control with the charcoal than you do with the paint, I do find that kids don't have as much of an attention span to charcoal as they do with paint. I have seen some kids that really love working with charcoal because it is messy and they can draw with it first and then smudge it wherever they want. But I do find most kids like working with paint. I feel as though charcoal is still very important to have in a school setting, or in an education setting, I should say, just because it does help to refine their motor skills. Of course, we can still do that with paint. They can use their fingers, they can use a paintbrush if we want to refine them even more. However, because you do have to grasp onto it like a pencil, you're using different muscles and the movements are a little bit different than if you were to paint. So I find that probably will help with the child with their fine motor skills. Now, as I mentioned before, being an artist myself, I feel as though every form of art is very important for a child to experience and encounter, just because, you know, just saying most kids like paint, okay, well, there might be that one kid that does like using crayons or charcoal or clay or that sort of thing. So you can't just say, okay, well, most kids like paint, so I'm only going to have paint in the classroom, which is obviously not the case. But you can't just say that, because then it's not fair for the child who might really like to use charcoal. And as I mentioned, using the different mediums helps to kind of focus in on their different muscle groups as well. So now I will lead you to my video of me experiencing both paint and charcoal as well.